Welcome back to Loop Training. This is session number 5, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail about working with a listing loop. So there's a few more steps involved with this one, so we'll walk through as much as we possibly can. Watching the previous videos will help shorten this a little bit, so please be sure that you have those watched before you dive into this one. But we're going to be working in your listing loop, and you're going to open a new loop and create it just like we would with a buyer loop. We're just going to basically have more folders and more documents. So in a listing loop, you will have 3 folders instead of just the 2 where we have that in the buyer loop. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start adding some documents to our loop. So the first thing I'm going to do is going over here to these 3 dots, and we're going to rename this folder just to get our head around what we're doing while we're in there. And we're going to do this as your listing documents. So everything that has to do with you and your seller client will go into this folder. So once we have that named, we're going to go over to Add Document. And this is where we're going to start pulling the document PDFs from your computer that you've already saved from CTM, which was in a previous video. So please be sure you watched that. So we're going to add them from our computer. And let's see, we have where we kept all of our documents. So just for the sake of being able to get familiar with adding the documents, we're going to select all of these. Pretend all of your documents are nicely organized on your computer with the property address so that you can always refer back to that. So we're going to add all these documents at once. And this is a beautiful system because you can do this. So you have all of these PDFs in here. The next thing you're going to want to do is create the cover sheet, and you can do this first to kind of set the tone for what you're doing in that loop. So either way is fine, but you're just going to go to templates and you're going to go down to transaction sheet. And again, this is the cover sheet. This lets compliance know exactly what your listing involves. We're going to click the check and hit copy and then click OK. We're going to go back into the transaction sheet and we're going to start filling it out. You might have to have some information open as far as your contract or realist to help you with this. I skipped through the autofill section because I like to go through and fill out line by line in the actual template. So I'm going to X out of this. So all we're going to do is fill this out. We're representing a seller, so this is our listing, and we're going to put the property address in. I feel like writing in caps today for some reason. I'm sorry. We'll change that. Year of construction is super important because this does alert compliance to look for a lead-based paint disclosure. There's actually 2 disclosures, so having that in here is going to be really important. So we're just going to say 1980 on this, and I would still have that lead-based paint. So here's where the dates come in handy. So your market date is the date that the home went active on the MLS. So we're going to say it's today. The contract date is the date that you went under contract as the listing agent on this property. So we're going to go back to your contract date and look at when you went under contract. And let's say we just did that about a week ago. Under contract date is unknown yet because we still haven't put it on the market, and the scheduled close date is still unknown. So remember, we're going to go probably back into this form once we're under contract. We're listing for $350 in this scenario, and you're going to say that you got the full 6%, so you're going to do a 3% on your side. If you are paying the transaction fee, you will put that here, otherwise it's going to be 0. I'm sorry, if the client's paying the transaction fee, that would go here. Otherwise, it would be 0 if you're going to cover that. And you are the IRE agent. Cooperating agent will be the buyer's agent, which is unknown at this point, so this will stay empty. And your seller information can go in here. And whatever other information you want to do. And the buyer information will be unknown until you go under contract. Title company is going to be who was stated in your listing agreement or listing documents. And then just fill out whatever you know. And again, lender information is to be determined because we don't have a buyer yet. If you're using a transaction coordinator, you will want to state that in this section so that they are acknowledged in the transaction. And you're also going to definitely want to put the source of your client. If it's a Copel lead, that will alert compliance to know that they need to adjust splits or look for additional documentation. Otherwise, you can put Sphere or whatever else you might have to give them information on where that client came from. And then any notes down here. You'll go back up here, you're just going to save it and go back to your loop, and that's in there. So there's all of your documents. Another document you're going to want to be sure to add is your MLS listing information. So the entry form, which will also be on your computer. So we're going to say it's a detached listing. This should be completely filled out before you get it into this into the dotloop system, but this just helps compliance get it in quicker, and all of your photos will be loaded into a separate system, not dotloop. Okay? So that's your listing document folder. So you're going to, once you're done with that, you're going to hit submit to review. You're going to enter all the information. Click Next, and since you're submitting the listing documents folder, you're only going to check that one, and then you're going to select the type of transaction that it will be, and then any notes that you want to add to compliance so that they know what's going on. I think it's always really helpful for you to say when this is going on the market so that they know in advance before getting into the loop if they have to do this sooner than later. But for now, I'm just going to write that I'm creating training video and then hit submit. Once you submit it, you'll see all of these documents are submitted, and then once they review, you'll see some changes on this and maybe some notes over here. So that is that folder. So let's pretend a couple weeks have gone by and we're now under contract. So we're going to go ahead and add another folder. There's going to be 3 total folders for your listing loop, but this one's going to be called under contract. So this folder and the closing folder are going to look very similar to your buyer loop because you've got under contract and closed in that one. So we're going to name that one, and then we're going to just start adding the documents. So the difference here is that your listing documents are only signed by you and your seller. Under contract are going to be documents signed by the buyer and the seller. So all of those documents would go in here. You would load them up through your computer. And then you would actually go back into your transaction sheet. And then you're going to update your transaction sheet to fill out all of those unknowns that we originally did. So you'll have the buyer name, Mr. Buyer, and you will have a title company, or a lender if there is one. It might be a cash deal. You can put that there. So the more complete you can make this, the better. The key parts are knowing the under contract date and the scheduled close date so that they can get your information all reviewed. Okay, so then you're just going to save that and go back. And then that will need to be submitted as well. Okay, so that's pretty much your listing loop. In the next video, we're going to go over how to add a CDA request, and then you should be sitting pretty with your dotloop education. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.